Hello, welcome to the Meeting of Minds podcast. I'm Philippa. Today's episode is going to be about conditioning and how really sometimes unconsciously we are really so bound up with our conditioning that we don't even know that it has happened, is happening, and what the effects on us are. And I knew I've known I've wanted to talk about this for a little while, because conditioning and the effects of conditioning has been coming at me from all directions. I have a lovely client who I'm working with, and we're really working through a lot of the conditioning that's coming there for her. We've been talking about conditioning in the online group that I run, my conditioning, particularly around parenting and my teenagers, which I talked about a few episodes ago, and generally also in a coaching group that I am a part of, where I've come to realize that I can really see people's conditioning, and I can really help them work out where it's come from. And I have come to realize that actually that is something I can do that not everybody can do, because I can just see it really quickly. Conditioning, has been coming at me from every angle, and I decided to come and talk about it. I've talked about things like survival patterns and patterns of behavior, and particularly in relation to my story. So in some previous episodes, I've really talked about how a big part of my therapy 5 years ago was really learning how the patterns of behavior that I'd learned during my childhood, I'd brought all the way through my adulthood and into my late 40s. And I was still behaving in those ways, even though I was no longer needing to survive. So, it's been interesting. And I think those patterns of behavior came from conditioning. And what do I mean by conditioning? I mean the subtle information and clues and ways that we learn to behave in our childhood to get our needs met. And those needs may be love, attention, care, safety, all those things. And if we have emotionally aware parents, then we might be shown how to understand those are our needs, how to ask for what we need, and we will then experience getting what we need. But we will experience the full circle of understanding what we need, asking for what we need, and receiving what we need. And sometimes receiving is quite hard, especially as we get older and learn more about our needs. Sometimes the stumbling block can then be receiving those needs, because we're so used to not receiving. So it's a full circle, understanding what it is we need, asking for what we need, receiving what we need. And a lot of us grow up with a break somewhere in that circle. And as a result of that, we learn how to basically manipulate. It is really manipulation. And, it took me a while to understand that. So if this is the first time you've heard this, it might take a little while to sink in, and don't worry, that is perfectly normal. But we learn to manipulate those around us to get what we needed. So, for instance, for me, I had a totally emotionally absent mother. She was an alcoholic. And I was the oldest of four. Two of them were a lot younger than me. So her attention was always somewhere else. So the pattern that I acquired was to be the good girl, the people pleaser, to preempt everybody else's needs and to meet those needs as quickly as I could, as well as I could, in the hope that I would get a little bit of attention for being that good girl. In reality, it didn't work. My mother was really resentful of me. Well, that's certainly how it felt. So she's not around anymore and I can't ask her. Maybe, I don't know, there might have been a bit of guilt in there that she could see that I felt I needed to behave like that. I don't know. I think mainly she was caught up in how hard it was having four children, and all the other stuff that was going on around her. But I definitely learned that it was easier to stay small, stay in the background, be quiet, be useful, be helpful, and basically toe the line, and do not only what was required of me, asked of me directly, which was very little, to be honest, because actually I'd already done it, but also I felt what I had to do was do more than was asked of me, and that pattern has definitely stayed with me, especially in my career. And it didn't feel safe to me to not do those things. I didn't know, you know, because some teenage, so it's really interesting because this ties in with the teenager episode that I did, because I don't know what it's like to be a rebellious teenager, because I was not one of those. I was not a teenager who felt that they could tell their parents they know nothing because the teenager already knows it all, that the parents are out of touch, that you know, their parenting is rubbish, that, or have an opinion about anything really. I was not that teenager. I was too busy being compliant. So that's partly one of the reasons why I'm struggling a little bit with my teenagers, because I don't have a frame of reference. I don't know what it's like to be them. I'm trying really hard. Empathy is definitely a skill of mine. And empathy is about being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and really get an understanding of what they're going through. That is one of my skills. So I am trying my best, but I don't actually have any experience of being a teenager like they are experiencing, because that wasn't my experience. Because my conditioning came in at a very young age to be compliant, to be what I thought I needed to be. And a lot of it was supposition on my part. It wasn't direct. So I fully accept now, I can accept now that I took on board all these behaviours to survive. And I did survive. So they were good survival strategies. They just weren't good by the time I got into my adulthood, when I was, an autonomous being looking after myself, and not really in survival mode. Although there is a part of me that feels like I've been in survival mode for a long, long time, and potentially, still in survival mode until my late 40s. I've said many times I'm a slow starter. So I'm definitely not in survival mode now. I don't know when that ended, but maybe that took until my late 40s, when I had my breakdown and everything unraveled for me. So back to conditioning though. My conditioning was really strong. And also we get conditioning from external. So not only do we get it from within the family, we get conditioning from outside. We see, we're bombarded with advertising that tells us how we should look, the clothes we should wear, the food we should eat, the stuff we should buy, the places we should go, the sports that we should play. I mean, everywhere there are in adverts images of fantastic looking people doing whatever it is they're trying to sell to us. We are constantly bombarded by those images, and that is conditioning. We are conditioned to think that, I don't know, to be happy we have to be slim, to be happy we have to wear designer clothes, to be happy we have to eat certain foods, we have to drink certain things, we need to go to certain places on holiday. Subtle, yes, the images are subtle, and no one image is going to make that much difference. But over the years and having these images sort of all around us for a long time, they seep into our bodies, and before we don't even know that we are thinking these things, that we are a result of our conditioning. And I'm saying it, please don't think that I am now no longer operating at all in accordance with my conditioning, because I am as susceptible as the next person to thinking that, oh, if only I don't know. Dieting used to be a big thing for me. I haven't talked on the podcast yet about my my troubled relationship with food over the years, and maybe I will do. Well, I will do one day. But I'm as susceptible as the next person to think that if only I tried that diet, then I will be slim and everything will be okay. I have tried over the years so many diets. I can't tell you. Diets are not made to work. The people peddling the diets don't want them to work, because if all it took was one diet, then there would be no diet industry. So, I mean, that's another conditioning, that we are buying into, me included. Absolutely, this has been part of my life and still is part of my life to a lesser extent, but still is. And I just wanted to talk about conditioning to sort of raise the awareness a little bit, that no matter how much we think we are free thinkers and we have our own opinions of things, and we are not susceptible to making decisions based on what other people what we think other people want us to do, what they tell us to do, what we think they might want us to do, that we are making our own true, honest choice for ourselves. No matter how much we think that is what we are doing, some of you listening and watching may be achieving that. But actually, I should imagine more of you are like me to some degree or other, and your decisions are also being fueled by conditioning in one way or another. I'll just let that land for a moment. Can you think of ways that your decision making isn't felt in your body? The decision of whether or not to do something, does that come from inside you, in your heart, in the center of you, or is it coming from your head? And is it subject? Is it the subject? Is the decision you're making the subject of conditioning, in one form or another? A lot of the time we follow what our parents have either told us to do, what we know they expect us to do, what they've always done, so we think that is the way that we have to do it. I'm not trying to throw parents under the bus and blame parents for everything. I'm just saying that a lot of the time we will base decisions we make on what we have experienced in the past. rather than having an understanding for ourselves from inside us what it is that is right for us. And much as I've already explained to you how my conditioning was strong from a survival point of view, I don't really have strong conditioning from my parents to follow what they did or do what they tell me to do, because my dad wasn't around for a good 20 years until I found him again when I was 30. My mum, I've always had a difficult relationship with my mum. She passed away 4 years ago now. And before that, for about the last 10 years of her life, I didn't have much relationship with her at all. And even before that, it was distant. So I've had very little of that, very little influence from my stepfather. So mostly my conditioning around my family is actually as a result of the childhood trauma that I experienced, and also the example that I have from them is an example of what not to do. So I do use my experience as being part of a family with them when I was younger, but more as an example of how not to do things. Like I've, tried to make sure I've brought my children up knowing so much how much they're loved, and telling them every day that I love them, and hugging them and kissing them, and being really annoying but knowing that no matter what they do, I tell them that I love them, and I tell them that it's the behavior I don't like, not them. I always make sure that I reinforce that I love them, but it might be something they're doing or saying that I don't like. Rather than, as the way I grew up was very much under the influence of my mother and her basically making me feel that myself, just me being me, was unacceptable. And that was the thing that I had to learn in therapy, that actually I am good enough. Just me being me, existing in the world, not helping people, not following through on the result of all that conditioning. Just me being me is enough. And that was such a lesson to learn, such a I want to say like self-honoring thing. And I realized as a result of my therapy, as my therapy was ongoing, that actually this deep void I'd had inside me, this deep gaping hole that I hadn't really understood was there, but I knew there was something. That's what led me to eat, to fill the hole. It was never hunger. It was always to fill the gaping hole. I learned that as my therapy went on, that hole was filling. Gradually, it was filling. And I kind of, this is going to sound a bit strange, bear with me. I filled myself up with me. And that helped me understand that I am enough. So, and it was the conditioning and the trauma together that had left me with that gaping hole in the first place. Another way that conditioning showed up for me definitely is my career choice. So I was a lawyer for 27 years, and I started my working life after I got all the exams out of the way in a big London law firm. And there was very definitely an expectation of the way that you behaved. You just did what was asked of you, even if that meant staying till 4 a.m. But also there was an expectation as well that you partied hard as well. It was fun. I'm not saying it wasn't, and it was all hard work. There was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of partying as well. It was a great time. I'm glad I had it. Wouldn't want to go back. I don't think I could do it anymore. but there was definitely an expectation. It was certainly, so I was there during the 90s, and it was, you were always expected to be at your desk. And so if you snuck out for any reason, or you wanted to leave early, you'd leave your computer on, and maybe something on your desk, or your jacket on the back of your chair, to make it look like you were still there. So you were in the building somewhere. So if anybody came looking, they'd think you were still there. I mean, that is conditioning, in that, to leave at 5:30, which is the end of your contractual hours, was not okay. You had to go the extra mile to be seen as doing a good job, and hoping that you would be. So you do a 2-year training contract, and then hopefully you get taken on a permanent job at the end. And everybody wanted to be kept on at the end of their training contract. So you played the game, but the conditioning was there, that there was a game and you had to play it if you were going to get a job at the end of it. And how many other, can you think of other places, other times that there's a game that needs to be played. There are certain rules that need to be followed in order to succeed. I'm doing succeed in quotes, without actually understanding, us ever really knowing, because it's never really set out what success looks like in that situation. It's all these little, this is what you've got to do. This is just what you've got to do. It's like, yeah, and who says? But there's this underlying unwritten rules. So yeah, and unwritten rules is what I've been talking a lot with clients about. Those rules that we still live by as adults, and a lot of the time we don't know exactly when they started. We don't know. We sometimes don't even know where they originated or where they came from. But we know, we have this feeling, this deep feeling in us, that this is something that we have to do. And to go against that takes a lot of courage and some support, really, to realise that to go against those rules, to act in a way that would seem to fly in the face of what we've learned to be true, can feel really unsafe. But also there is great healing there, because what we will find, if we can have that courage to show up differently, that the world doesn't fall apart. And actually, my experience was that actually really positive, because people liked that I was showing up differently. And I would have had no idea if I just kept on the way I was going. But actually, I'd got to this place where I couldn't carry on. I just could not carry on for lots of reasons the way I was. So I felt like I had nothing to lose by being different, by being vulnerable, by showing the side of me that was struggling, rather than hiding that away. And I would love more people to try that showing up differently earlier in their lives, before they end up at a place where they've hit rock bottom, where you've hit rock bottom, because it's not a nice place to be, and it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't. I hope I'm not making it sound easy, because it's not easy. But also, it's not impossible. It's not something that you can't do. If you want to do it, you absolutely will be able to do it. You might need a little bit of support. You might not. But you absolutely will be able to do it if you want to. And for me, at the other side of all this has been that joy that I've been talking about, and freedom to be me. Finding joy in everyday moments, and just generally living a much more fulfilling life, by actually paring it down and making it more simple. Yeah. So that's today's episode. I hope you found it useful. Please let me know. Please get in touch. I would really love to hear from you if you have listened to this and you feel drawn to send me a message. Please do. I would love to hear from you. What did you learn? Did you learn anything? What did you recognize in yourself? What might you do as a result of what you've heard today? What might you do differently? Is there anything you might try? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. And until next week, you take great care, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends. Please subscribe. And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website at www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.